We've got about 20 items here of things I want to inspect, upgrade, or fix. Welcome back to Clear Direct, and yes, it's been a year. We get to do the condition inspection, which is like an annual in the certified world, but I built this plane. It's an experimental, so we're gonna run through everything that I'm gonna fix. But if you're new here, my name's Steve. I flew a career in the Air Force flying fighter jets. I now fly for a major legacy airline, just upgraded to captain this year, in fact. And I fly Bonanza, love the Bonanza, but I am truly passionate about experimental aviation and bush flying. It has been an amazing year from hatching this bird just about a year ago. The inspection was just over a year ago. The first flight was just under a year ago. And it has flown almost flawlessly. We'll talk about some of the squawks that I've had through the year. And then at the very end of the video, we're gonna talk through a major squawk that has me a little bit scared about what could have happened, and has to do with the prop bolts. And then get into some of the upgrades that I've got planned for the Backcountry Bogey. So this is a Rans S21 Outbound, named it the Backcountry Bogey. And I've got the whole build series on YouTube. I'll go ahead and link it here. The year has been just fantastic, from the full robust phase 1 test flying. Now that the FAA has approved the task-based flight test program, that was super rewarding. And then immediately into the backcountry, scaring myself a little bit. And then off to Oshkosh, thanks Continental for hosting us in the booth. And then more backcountry flying, and now it's just time to do some inspections. So for that, let's get the camera locked down and we'll talk about everything. Let's go. Okay, I've got about 20 or 25 items we're gonna get to, but first, a quick appreciation. First off, you guys, the people that I met at Oshkosh and through the channel and other places, but specifically, and most importantly, to the folks in the backcountry and the guys that have taken me under their wing and kind of showing me the ropes and putting up with my lack of experience in the backcountry. I've got a lot to offer airmanship-wise in other aspects and campfire stories, talking cool fighter jet stuff. But you guys have shown me so much and taught me so much, so thank you guys. But moving on, let's get into the first thing. So I need to fix or strengthen or replace my gear strut fairings, or specifically one of them, I think the left one. I chose this kit because A, it's all aluminum, B, it has a huge useful load, and C, it goes fast. It also lands slow. But in order to go fast, it has fairings all over the place. And unfortunately, they make these fairings out of ABS, really thin ABS plastic. And these particularly are in a high stress area when you land like I do, and it's behind the exhaust. These things develop some cracks. And so I'm thinking, rather than rebuilding one and paying my painter to, speaking of which, the paint has held up great. So thanks Steven and Brian, they did a fantastic job with the paint. I haven't done any ceramic coating. I'm considering doing it, just wax on it right now. But back to the fairing. I'm thinking about maybe laying up some fiberglass on the inside to give it some structure and rigidity and save potentially the fairing that I've got. Otherwise, I'll just get a new one and get it painted, but not the most strong part right there. The right door fitment just needs a little bit of tweaking. My passengers get in and they're scared to kind of pull it, and it makes kind of a sound when it clunks. So I'll just fix that. It's not damaging anything, but it's just kind of annoying. The first mention of CHTs will be right here, then we'll get more at the end of the video. Cylinder 1 on the front right, that was actually the coolest cylinder by far. So I wanted to dam the air a little bit and, you know, share the love with the other cylinders. So I put in what I thought was going to be a temporary fix. I think it's still temporary. It's just some high temperature HVAC tape, but I want to put in something that's a little bit more permanent. So that's my first call for action from you guys is, if I talk about something, please let me know in the comments section what I should do, or if you have input on what I need to do, then all ears. All right, I need to grease the rudder pedal. So the rudder pedals are squeaky. You've probably heard it in some of my videos. They're just annoyingly squeaky. And it's not a safety concern, but I think I can take out the whole system. I'll make sure that there's no powder coat left that's causing some vibration, and then I'll add a bunch of grease. I tried oiling it with some lightweight oil, some like LPS 1, 2, and 3, which are like WD-40 essentially, and then a wax-based one. Those didn't work. So I've got some heavier grease that I'll use. Speaking of grease, I need to grease the tail wheel. Haven't done that in a while because the grease gun I got from the auto shop just never worked. So I got a air pressure pneumatic grease gun, so I need to do that. Also on the rudder pedal system, When I installed it, it's only installed by 2 like AN3 bolts, and I didn't feel satisfied with how much grip the bolt was into the nut plate in the floor there, or attached to the frame really. So I want to just inspect that and potentially go to a longer bolt to ensure that I have adequate grip. Last thing on the tail wheel and rudder system is the tail wheel doesn't really steer very much. I think it's just because there's too much slack. There's not enough, it's not tight enough in that rudder cable, or specifically the rudder cable where it branches off to go to the tail wheel. So I can tighten that by removing some chain links and get some more action out of there. I kept it loose on my DAR's recommendation because if it breaks, you're gonna have a hard over rudder. But right now, it might as well not be a steerable tail wheel. Next up, I want to seal the windshield hold down strip. There's evidence that there's a little bit of air, and then if I'm flying through moisture, a little bit of moisture that gets in underneath the windshield. So just an easy solution there with some silicone, I think. There's also some spots along the windows and the windshield with the black Pro Seal that I probably won't do it during condition inspection, but at some point I'll get some more Pro Seal, mix that up and touch up those spots. I want to swap out any plastic pitot-static fittings. I suspect that I've got a leak in my pitot-static system. My indicated airspeed is well below what would be a calibrated airspeed, and I know that from just all the testing I've done. So the effect of that is that I'm not getting the accurate winds because the Garmin system uses the indicated airspeed versus your GPS and everything else and heading and whatnot to calculate your winds aloft. So I'm always showing that I've got a little bit of a tailwind. Unless I have a really strong headwind, then I'm showing me a less of a headwind vector. Anyway, I can get more into that in another video if you'd like. But I'm going to swap out some pitot-static fittings that I think potentially are leaking. And then I want to install a drain in my static line. I want to get this IFR certified, so that's the next step after I've kind of upgraded the pitot-static system. And to be able to drain the static line without disconnecting and thus rendering your IFR certification null and void, I need a little drain. So I got to figure out that. Then I want to upgrade the G3X firmware if necessary. I don't know if there is a new firmware, but I've just been super impressed with Garmin and how they've been continually updating and coming up with, functional ways to help your awareness. The one example I like to use is I've set it up so that I don't get a green airspeed arc until my oil temperature comes up above 90 degrees. It's just one more indication that if I'm not watching my oil temperature and I don't have a green arc on my airspeed indicator, oh shoot, that's right, my oil temperature is too low. So those sorts of things. And I want to start thinking through all the potential there to have condition-based alerting and all that stuff. I've got a sticky pilot side push to talk button. It should be an easy fix. I got to tidy up some wires behind the pilot side panel. My big 13 shoes sometimes will hit some wires, and I don't want that to happen. I've already bore scoped the cylinders, but I want to send it off to Savvy Analysis. So without me being an A&P, but me being the FAA designated repairman for this tail number, I'm responsible or capable to sign off the airworthiness of it year to year. So that being said, yeah, I'm going to do compression, more on that here in a second, but I also want to bore scope and keep an eye on the condition of the inside of the cylinders, the valves, the piston head, all that. Piston head surprised me how nasty that thing is. I don't know if it's just carbon buildup. Let me know in the comments if you've got an idea of some sort of detergent or how to clean that up. But anyway, the Savvy Analysis will take a look at it and give you some recommendations on if you need to clean your exhaust valve seats, for example. Okay, I want to replace my spark plugs. I've already got them. I'm going to replace all 8 of them. I don't know. Do you guys know, can you refurbish or clean your spark plugs? I'm pretty sure you can, but I don't have a sandblaster. I don't know what's required for that. So let me know on if there's a good video that I should watch to figure out how to refurbish spark plugs, because at $9 a pop times 8 every single year, it adds up. But for now, just replacing them. I've ordered a compression tester from, I believe it's Aircraft Tool Supply, but it's on back order. But I've got some friends locally that have some. So once I get the engine back together with the prop on and everything else, we're going to crank it, change the oil, of course, and then I want to do the compression testing when it's hot. That'll be super interesting to me. Okay, that covers the majority of it, except the 2 major things, the CHTs and the prop bolt shearing. I'm going to talk to you about that on the business end of this airplane here in a second. But first, couple of upgrades. So the Alaska bush wheels, I put 29s. I replaced my 22s with 29 Alaska bush wheels, not the Airstreaks. I'll do a whole video on the whys, the drawbacks, the benefits of those once I fly them. But those are already on. I love the way it looks for whatever that's worth. The next thing is a little bit more for creature comfort, and it's the Koger sunlights. So you'll see them in most RV aircraft, anything with a big skylight. You've got to have the sunshades. These are the accordion style that'll slide. I've just been using some, you know, car circular ones that you can kind of fold up, and they've been fine, but it's time to get a proper set of sunshades there. Okay, that's it from back here. Meet you at the front of the airplane. I forgot to mention, I did have to swap my battery already, which kind of surprises me. Maybe it's because I was so crazy with my avionics testing back in the day. I wired the whole thing and had it powered up for a long time, but I had it on a charger and everything else. It just kind of surprised me. It also surprised me how quickly it failed. Like, there was no like chugga, 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 but then get going. Like, you can get yourself out of the backcountry if it fails back there. It was just one day, click, dead. Put it on a charger. Yeah, it started once. Then after that, not ever again. So I replaced it with one of the same model numbers. And when it showed up, it didn't have the MJ at the end of the model number, which stands for metal jacket. Called West Coast Batteries, who shipped it to me, and they said, hey, as long as it has a red metal jacket, then guess what? It's got the metal jacket for MJ on there. So just a heads up for you guys. I should have mentioned up top that the list that I went through is by no means exhaustive. I'm going to go through every single line item in the checklist that's supplied to Rans builders in the manual. So just to CYA a little bit. Okay, on to the two major things I teased you at the beginning of this video that I really want to focus on here. The first is CHTs. I've been having some CHT issues, right? So just, it runs hot. I think partly because the intakes are pretty small. I think that's how this airplane, one of the ways this airplane is so fast is there's limited cooling drag. Well, you know, it's a math problem, right? You can only get so much air in. So I've been trying to accelerate the air out, which is to increase the size of the opening at the bottom of the cowl exhaust. I added a trip lip to hopefully increase the vacuum. I added some ramps right here on the top of the cowling to ensure that there's no turbulent airflow getting tripped up at the top of the intakes. And then my friend Jeff at Aerosport Products rolled me this. This seemed to have good luck with him. The intent is to install it at the bottom of the firewall, but clearly there's a lot that I have to modify this to get it around everything, and I'm not sure how I'd install it, drill through the firewall. That's never a fun thing with stainless steel. But the other potential solution I thought about was sending the fuel servo back. So some of the other guys sent this back to increase their fuel flow at the rich end. So just throw more fuel at the problem. That's an option. But what they had me do is go up and fly it. And when you're full rich at all different throttle settings, so idle, quarter, mid, 3/4, full, you establish your airspeed at that point, and then you start leaning out and seeing when it peaks. And it's as long as it's a greater than 150 degree EGT rise before you hit the peak, then you should be getting enough fuel at rich. Okay, hopefully I explained that. And that was successful, super successful. I was definitely getting enough on the rich end. So that kind of takes that potential solution out. So the last thing, which I'm really excited about, thanks to Tom Agin, A-G-I-N, on the Rans S21 Builders Forum on Facebook, he had a very thorough post about his conversation, his very fruitful conversation with Klaus at Lightspeed Engineering. So we've got 2 Lightspeed Plasma 3 electronic ignition boxes, and it's connected to the manifold pressure. So, and then it's got a timing ring back here that times the ignition, the baseline at 22 degrees top dead center, and it can adjust from there based upon manifold pressure requirements. That's pretty advanced, and apparently that's a pretty hot way to run this engine. So you can retard it a little bit by changing out the sensor ring to, I believe, 20 degrees top dead center. Don't quote me on that. For a Titan IO-340 high compression engine, which is what I have. And hopefully we won't lose, we'll lose negligible power and get dramatically reduced CHTs. So I've sent an email today to Klaus, so I'll update you guys in the future on the fruitfulness of that conversation, but I might end up pulling off the flywheel and timing ring and swap that out for something else. That is it on the CHTs. The biggest thing has been, I have been experiencing some sheared bolts. Okay, I've got the WHIRLWInd ground adjustable carbon fiber 82 cub that installs like this, okay? This is just kind of temporarily mounted, so there's no safety wire and it's not torqued down. But I wanted to show you that to establish kind of how everything works. These are Nordlock washers. There's two of them. They kind of have teeth and they bite together, and they are meant to lock the bolt in once you torque it down. But every time you adjust the angle of your prop, of which I did kind of a lot during early flight test, these things tend to wear out. So I've replaced these, I've got new ones, so that's issue one, but not a big issue. The main issue I saw is I saw this bolt and this bolt shear. Let me show you. So this bolt sheared early on in flight test, replaced it, and then later on this bolt sheared in flight test. So when I went to go readjust the prop, I found that the bolt was sheared and it was spinning around just totally useless in there, which scares me. So at least they didn't happen at the same time, but regardless, that is disconcerting. Nothing else sheared during flight, but when I went to disassemble everything for condition inspection, the back part of the hub is attached to, there's a prop extension back here via these two bolts, and then these four bolts make up the 6 that attach the whole assembly to the prop extension. This bolt in particular, when I went to remove it, it was secure, but then when I went to remove it, it sheared. Then I went to remove this bolt. All the other bolts came out just fine and looked okay. But then this bolt, when I went to remove it, it was very, very difficult to remove. I put it back in, I put some lubricant on the back side of the bolt, and the threads looked a little bit dingy, but I eventually got it out without shearing it, luckily. But the threads and the lugs behind it were essentially stripped or galled. So the question is what is causing all these issues? I'm worried about maybe some vibrations, but the other thing is evidenced by this. Do you see this soot right here? That is carbon fiber dust. There's no mention of what to do to prep the aft side of the contact surface of the raw carbon fiber against the propeller hub. And when I took it off, this surface showed a lot, it looked a lot like this, okay? And so that gave me some pause. I thought, what if there's carbon fiber that's dust that's getting in there and causing some galling and some problems with the threads? Sure enough, I shipped this prop extension back to Sabre Manufacturing in Texas, and Caleb said immediately, he's like, I know what your problem is. You need to wet sand this surface right here. So, you know, subsequent finer and finer grit sandpaper with water and sand it down until it's a smooth finish so that you are not crushing the ridges of carbon fiber and negating the torque values on your clamping force or on your bolts to get the right clamping force. And then number 2, prevent the carbon fiber dust from galling up the threads. I think we've got enough to put this back together along with brand new hardware. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, once it's all back together, taxi it on over or tow it over to my Bonanza mechanic, my certified mechanic, and we're going to do some dynamic balancing to ensure that I don't have any vibrations that I don't want. So that's pretty scary, right? I've got a friend who we lost in a husky at Johnson Creek due to potentially a lost prop. So unfortunately, Whirlwind is unresponsive. I've reached out to them initially when I saw the first bolt. I saw them at Oshkosh. Here's the thing, where were they at Oshkosh? They were in the Hartzell booth. They were just purchased by Hartzell. So I don't know if they're going through some reorganization, but they're totally unresponsive. If somebody has a phone number or an email address of somebody who can actually get back to me, and because if I were Whirlwind, I would want to know about sheared bolts and some potential issue that's going on. I want to get this information out there. I posted a question on the Facebook forum for the RANS builders if anybody else is wet sanding, and RANS, apparent to me, they didn't post the question. So I posed it directly to the company themselves, and they said they'd never heard of the technique of wet sanding that, and they've never had any issues. So kind of a head scratcher, very scary. I hope that I can get this back together and fly with confidence, but until I do. I'm not flying with anybody else in the aircraft. I'm going to continue to fly with my Lift Aviation helmet, which brings me to the sponsor of today's episode. Thanks so much to the folks over at Lift Aviation for sponsoring this episode, as well as many of my other episodes. It's going to be a fantastic 2025, another year as me being a Team Lift Aviation pilot. Thank you guys for putting that trust in me. It's a big responsibility, and hopefully we'll get the Bogey up and running soon. I can't wait for another year of hopefully flawless, squawk-free flying in the backcountry. Till then, it's Steve, you're cleared direct.